Bhasa represents our attention. It flits from one thing to another. It gets involved with, it identifies with one thing after another. And this goes on and on and on and on and on. We're going to be hearing about some of the things that Bhasa got involved with. There's a whole stream of them. And this is quite a common type of narrative that we get in the Yoga Vasistha. Back in section 6.1, chapter 62 for example, we had the story of a mendicant who went through many lifetimes. And I put this in the context of something called insight meditation. This is where you retrace the involvements of your attention with the idea of bringing it right back to where it truly is right now. Bringing it right back to itself. So we can see this as another example of insight meditation practice. We retrace the steps of our attention and finally bring it back to rest in itself. So let's enter into the roller coaster of Bhasa's attention, Bhasa's awareness. Bhasa said, "I saw many things and I wandered a lot without experiencing fatigue." Consciousness is indefatigable. It always wants more experience. I experienced many things in many different ways. All this I remember. I experienced many pleasures and much sorrow in many bodies over a long period of time and in distant places in this limitless space. I attained various bodies on account of boons and curses, and in those embodiments I saw countless objects and scenes. I was also determined to see and experience everything. This was the original boon that I obtained from the fire god. Therefore, even though I had different bodies on different planes, I still pursued the original intention of gaining a thorough knowledge of this world. For 1,000 years I lived as a tree. I had to endure many sufferings during that period. My mind was totally centered within myself, and without mental activity I produced flowers and fruits. For 100 years I was a deer on Mount Meru. I had a golden colour. I lived on grass and I loved music. I was very small and therefore non-violent. For 50 years I was a sarabha. This is an 8-footed animal, more powerful than the lion. After that I became a Vidyadhara celestial. Then I became the son of the swan, which is the vehicle of the Creator Brahma. I lived as a swan for 1,500 years. For 100 years I listened to the divine music of the celestial attendants of Lord Narayana. That's Vishnu. Then I became a jackal and lived in a forest. A huge elephant ravished the bush in which I lived. When I was dying on account of this, I saw that elephant killed by a lion. After this I became a nymph in another world and lived alone for half an epoch on account of the curse of a sage. After this I lived for 100 years as a Valmika bird. When our nest was destroyed along with the tree on which we lived, I lost my partner and then lived the rest of my life alone in a far-off place. Then I became an ascetic, having gained a certain amount of dispassion. It's worth noting here that there really isn't much of a connection, is there, between one birth and the next. The traditional view of reincarnation likes to assume there's the one soul undergoing all these experiences. But it's not like that. It's like your dreams. In your dreams, you can have two dreams completely separate from each other. One dream might have followed on from the other dream, but there's no connection between one dream and the previous dream. There might have just been a slight association. For example, you might have been Somebody might have said something to you in one dream, and your awareness is focused on that one thing, and that's the seed for the new dream. This is how it goes. I think the Yoga Vasistha has been very insightful here into how consciousness works, or how the limitations of consciousness work. It's just a process of random association. It's sometimes called coincidence, like when the crow settles on the coconut palm and at the same time the coconut falls. This is called coincidence, but we could call this association. It's just a random association. And we get caught up in these experiences to become real and significant to us. I saw many amazing things. I saw a world which was made entirely of water. Elsewhere I saw a woman in whose body the three worlds were reflected as in a mirror. When I asked her who she was, she replied, "I am pure consciousness, and all the worlds are my limbs." Eventually, we get a little knock, a little reminder as to our true nature. Even as I create such bewilderment in you, even so are all things. Till you see everything with the same bewilderment and wonder, you cannot know their real nature. If we just accept things as reality, and this is how things are, this is soporific. This is what keeps us asleep. Unless we're bewildered and amazed by everything that's happening, we're going to remain asleep. We need to realize how totally bizarre everything is, how unfathomable and amazing it all is, and then we might start looking into it properly. All the worlds are one's own limbs. I hear them all as one hears sounds and expressions during one's dream. So that's what this woman said. Back to Bhasa. I saw countless beings emerge in her and then dissolve in her too. Elsewhere I saw an unusual form of cloud. So he's had this momentary realization of consciousness, but it soon goes because of the drama of what's going on around him. Elsewhere I saw an unusual form of cloud which produced a dreadful sound of clashing missiles and which rained weapons on the earth. I saw another wonder. The whole earth was covered in darkness, and whole villages were flying away to a distant world. I saw your village in another world. Elsewhere I saw that all beings were of the same nature. Elsewhere I saw a world without a sun, moon and stars, and there was no darkness. All its inhabitants were radiant and illumined. This is like a heavenly realm, isn't it? There is no world I have not seen, nothing I have not experienced. So even though there are these insights, the drama of everything that's going on just sucks the consciousness, sucks our awareness back into it, back into the maelstrom.